Hello lads and lasses, welcome once again to John Robson Guitar Tuition. Now then, have you ever noticed, I'm sure you have, that there are certain guitarists out there who, whilst they don't go in for much in the way of flashy fretboard pyrotechnics, they still seem to be able to play exceptionally memorable guitar solos that kind of stay in your mind and you can go away humming them. Well, today I'm going to show you the secret to doing that. Okay, in that solo you've just heard me play, I was using three main techniques to give it its sense of melody. One of those techniques is related to note choice and the other two are phrasing related. We'll have a look at the note choice element of it first, but before we get into that, it would be a big help if you had some knowledge of understanding how chords are put together. So let's have a quick look at that before we begin. Let's take a look at the chord of F major. The first thing we need to do is identify each individual note that you're playing when you hold that shape down. And you can see that on the 6th string, the 4th string and the 1st string, you're holding down the note of F. On the 5th and 2nd strings, you're holding down a C note. And on the 3rd string, you're holding down an A note, which means that the notes in an F major chord are F, A and C. What we need to do now is look at the relationships between those notes. And in this table you can see that the A note is 4 semitones or frets above the F note. And you can also see that the C note is 3 semitones or frets above the A note, which means that in an F major chord we have our root note, F in this case, and then we have another note 4 semitones above it, A in this case, and then we have another note 3 semitones above that, C in this case. And that is a formula that you can use to work out the notes in any major chord. You simply take your root note, then go up 4 semitones or frets, then go up another 3 semitones or frets. So that's how you can work out what notes are going on in any major chord. What about minor chords though? Well, let's have a look at this A minor chord. And once again, let's identify the notes that are in that chord. You can see that on the 5th and 3rd strings you're playing an A note. On the 4th and 1st strings you're playing an E note. And on the 2nd string you're playing a C note, which means that the notes in an A minor chord are A, C and E. And once again, let's take a look at the relationships between those notes. Well, you can see that the C note is 3 semitones or frets above the A note. And you can also see that the E note is 4 semitones or frets above the C note. So that means that in an A minor chord we have a root note, then the note 3 semitones above that, then the note 4 semitones above that. And as before, this is a general method for working out the notes in any minor chord. You take your root note, you go up 3 frets, and then you go up 4 frets. And armed with that information, you should now be able to figure out the notes in any major or minor chord. Right, hopefully that made sense. So let's have a look at the chord sequence that we're going to be creating a solo over. You'll see in this next clip that not only have I given you the chord names, but I've also saved you the trouble of having to work out what notes are in each chord. Now all you have to do is choose one note from each chord and just play that note over the relevant chord as we go through the sequence. A little bit like this. Once you have those notes chosen and you've memorised where they are, all you got to do now is start stitching them together with an appropriate scale. A pentatonic, for instance, which is what I'm going to use. F major pentatonic, because we're in F major here. And coming up next is a solo where I do exactly this. This is a genuine first take, warts and all kind of thing. I have no idea what I'm going to play. We'll see how it comes out, but you should be able to see on the screen that what I'm doing is just taking those target notes, as we'll call them, and moving between them using the F major pentatonic. Here it is. Well, that's the note choice element taken care of, and yes, I will admit that I did stray outside the F major pentatonic for that and venture into a little bit of Ionian mode territory, but it's all good. Now, let's have a look at the first of the two phrasing methods that I was talking about. And this one is so simple and so effective that it's just a really good little ploy. Widely used by many guitarists, many lead guitarists. Here, coming up next, I've played the intro lick from 3 pretty well-known guitar solos. See if you can spot what is going on rhythmically. Well, did you spot it? If you did, well done. If you didn't, don't worry. It's probably because it was so simple and obvious that you overlooked it. Briefly, what was happening was that each one of those lead guitar solos began on the bar before the actual solo, if you see what I mean. Basically, you're beginning your first lick in the bar before that lick kind of comes to fruition by landing on the chosen note from the underlying chord, that kind of concept that we looked at earlier. And if you do that with all subsequent licks, for instance, if in bar 5, for example, you are going to land on that note, then the lick that features that note will begin in bar 4. So the lick ends or resolves on the note that is the important one, the target note that we mentioned earlier. Have a listen to those 3 clips again and you'll see that that is exactly what is going on, and that is the first of our 2 little phrasing techniques. And now we come to the second of the 2 phrasing techniques I want to talk about today. Put simply, this is just basically repetition, playing the same thing more than once, or playing elements of the same thing more than once. I'm going to break this down into 3 different strands, and the first one of those is where you simply take the same phrase and play it over again. Now, bear in mind that all of these phrases that we're playing are based around a target note, a note that we are targeting which is present in the underlying chord. So if you're going to play the same phrase more than once, you need to make sure that its kind of core note is present in the chords that you're going to be playing it over. So the first 2 chords in the backing track are an F and a C. So if we look at what notes those chords have in common, it's basically a C note. Okay, so I could take a phrase that's centered around a C note. We'll use this one here, 10th fret, 4th string, and I'm just going to play a phrase over both of those chords, play it twice, once over each chord, and yeah, that note will work. Here's what that sounds like. And as you can hear, that works pretty good. What happens though when you don't have a note that is shared by the chords that you want to repeat the phrase over? Well, you just change that note. So for instance, after the F and C chords, it then goes to a D minor, which doesn't contain a C note, but it does contain a D note. And I'll grab that here at the 12th fret on the D string again. So playing the first 2 phrases, which are the same phrase, that kind of thing, over the first 2 chords, and then modifying it over the D minor chord to land on the D note, which fits the chord. Here's what it sounds like. And next, what I'm going to do is take that basic idea of just changing that target core note, but keeping the rest of the phrase the same, or largely the same. I'm going to extend it over the whole 8 bars of the chord sequence, and that's going to sound like this. And the third and final strand of this phrasing repetition trick, if you want to call it that, is to just take the phrasing pattern, the rhythmic shape of the lick, and use that. Don't worry about staying around that same group of notes that your original phrase was built from. Just take the rhythm of those notes. And what can often happen as you're doing this is that can evolve, and you can start adding extra notes in and lengthening it or shortening it and playing around with it, but it still provides a sense of continuity. All the while you're doing this, you're kind of remembering to land on those specific target notes for each chord, and all of these things combined together do make a solo sound melodic. Here's what it's going to sound like. And there you have it. There's a few little tips and tricks for you to help you play memorable melodic sounding guitar solos. You can download a jam track for this lesson and a PDF that accompanies it from the description box below, and pretty soon you'll be flying with it. One thing that does sometimes get said about looking at playing lead guitar in this manner is that it's a little bit too schooled and academic, or I've even heard the word cold and clinical mentioned from time to time. And I dispute that, really. It's just a case of learning some musical grammar. And in the same way as I'm speaking to you now and I'm using grammar and syntax, I'm not really thinking about any of those things or sentence construction or anything like that. I'm just saying what's on my mind, and it comes out. But you know, you rewind a few years to when I was a toddler, and it was something that I would have to put a conscious effort into. But the more you do it, the more you speak, the more fluent you become. Ask anyone who's ever learned a foreign language. It's simply by using that language or a second language I should say, it's simply by using that language that you become fluent in it. And it's exactly the same with this. If you put all of this information into practice and use it again and again and again, it may be a little bit kind of, cold and clinical to begin with, but as soon as you start to get some familiarity with it, it will soon start sounding like, you know, a fluent guitar solo, an artistic expression, basically. You will no longer be thinking in terms of all of the mechanics of it. So there you go. If you've enjoyed this lesson, please hit the subscribe button, and that way you'll get to see more of them. And if you're a fan of guitar music, and frankly, why are you here if you're not, then why not check out my new album. It's called The Whiskey Made Me Do It, and it's basically instrumental bluesy rock guitar. Catchy tunes with flashy guitar, basically. That's how I often describe it. It's available on Amazon, iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, all the usual places, as well as the PDF for the lesson and the jam track. I'll put the purchase links for the album in the description box below. And with that, I shall wish you a good day and see you all next time. Bye for now, folks.